CD cover, and we're ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is unlock the background under your layers palette here. Since this is introduction to the basics again, you might be a bit rusty with Photoshop. You can see we have our layers palette here. It works in a stacking method, so if I bring in another object, as I see in the moment, if it's on top of my background, it'll appear in the front of my window. So anything on top will appear in front. I also have my different channels, which are made up of the red, green and blue channels, as I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to unlock this background at the moment so I can change it a bit. And I'm going to use my paint bucket tool just to fill in the background black. Now I'm going to open up my different files, bring them into Photoshop. First of all, we have what I've called finished, which is our spectrogram that we created earlier on and colorized. And now I'm gonna bring in our other picture that we have, which is just titled weird, which is just a streaky effect, which is included on Blackboard. Okay, so I have this image first. I can just gonna unlock it again by double clicking on it, and I'm just going to bring it in to our window here. I'm going to make this full size so we can see what we're doing. So we're able to move this around. What I want to do first is transformers, make it a bit smaller. So we have different options under edit here for transforming our various layers. As you can see, when I just dragged it into the window of our canvas, you can see that layer appeared on top of our background layer. So I have my different transform tools in Edit Transform. I'm just going to transform the scale. The shortcut for this is Control T, and I'm going to scale it down. Now this will change the size of the actual image and stretch it upwards or sideways or whatever. But if you hold down Shift, it'll keep it uniform, so it'll keep it the same aspect. Okay, so I just want it around, maybe around this size here will do. Okay, and press enter to apply that. And I'm going to transform it again, and I'm going to rotate it around with my rotate tool. And I just click on the outside of the box, click and hold to rotate my image around. And I can move it to where I want to. Inside. Okay, that'll do for now. Press enter to apply that. I'm after undoing that, so I'm just going to go, if you make any mistakes, you can do Control Shift Z for step forward, or step backwards is Alt Control and Z. Just going to step forward in that. Okay, I just want to rotate this around a bit more, just to the other side. Okay, just to around here. Now at this point I'd like to mention grids, because when you're creating your document, we've talked at the beginning about creating a color scheme, which we're using our browns and blacks, and but we want to know how to lay something out in an image. So you can use grids if you want to. So the easiest way of creating a grid would be just to go to View, New Guide. Say we can use a guide if we want to, and it can be vertical or horizontal. So you can use something as simple as, let's say, the rule of thirds to divide an image up into. So let's say our document is, this one is 120 millimeters across. So I'll just go a third across of that, which would be actual 4 centimeters, because there's 10 mil in a centimeter. Create our guide there. New guide, we'll put this one at 8 centimeters across. Okay, so you could simply divide up your image using guides into thirds. So you could decide to put your text in one section and let's say part of an image in the other section here. You can divide this up how you like in different ways. Let's say we could divide it up further into vertically as well. 4 centimeters, and put one at 8 as well. Okay, so you could choose to put, let's say, use 3 blocks here. If you're doing a magazine layout, you might decide to use, okay, let's say block 1, 2, this block, which would be block 4 and block 5. You might decide to use these 4 blocks to put your main photograph in. Let's say you have a photo, you're doing a magazine, or even this album cover. You could decide to put your main photographic elements in here. And then you might decide, if it was a magazine, that all my text will go in these bottom 3, or let's say bottom 2 squares in here. And you want to leave some space. We don't want to, the main thing we want to do here is not to clutter our image up too much. That's the mistake most people make. So something simple and that's nice and neatly laid out will work a lot better than something that has, you know, everything, pieces of images or text everywhere. So if this was a picture and I had some text down in these 2 or 3 bottom squares, I might leave these 2 squares here blank, just to leave a bit of breathing room. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just I'm going to clear these guides for the moment. It was just an example. I'm going to duplicate this layer here, which is my spectrogram. So if I click and drag it into this little square beside the bin, I can duplicate it up here. So that means I can click and drag it to around here. The main reason I'm duplicating is because when I rotated the actual shape, I just want to keep the same amount of rotation for each of my images that I'm using to create my album cover. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this once more. And bring it around out to here. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in my other image that I imported, which is called Weird. If I can find it. Okay. I'm going to unlock this layer again. Click OK. I'm just going to click and drag it into my window. Oh, keep on doing that. I'm going to press Ctrl T to transform this again, and I'm just going to hold down Shift and make it smaller as I did with the other image. You could also do this beforehand if you went into your image options. Let's say if I'll just apply this transformation first. If I right click on my window inside here and go to image size, I can change the width and height of my image. So instead of transforming it beforehand, let's say if it's a really large image, I might want just to cut it down in size here before I bring it into my actual project window. Okay, so there's a few different ways of doing that. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this black and white. There's, several different ways of doing that. You could go back into your image and adjustments where you can adjust your, let's say you could go into hue and saturation and completely take out the saturation out of your image, which will make it black and white for you. Or you could go Control Shift U is the shortcut, which will do it instantly. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate this around again with my transform tools. Let's say around to there. Should be okay. I'm going to apply this transformation. And now what I'm going to do is, as you're going along, you can just click enter. Should be able to click enter or double click on the name and rename these things. So I could just name this layer Weird just to remind you what it was. And you could do the same with these other layers inside here if you wanted to. So you could name this spectrogram just so you don't get lost. Okay. Now we're going to use some transfer modes. So inside here we have transfer modes, and what these do is they basically blend a layer with other layers below it. So I'm on my top layer here, which is weird. I'm going to use a soft light, um, and you can see that is blending into the layers below it. Okay, so if I move this around, I can see that it's starting to have an effect on my images. So I'm going to rotate this around again until I get it right. Around here. Okay. I can choose to duplicate this image again. Just duplicating will have a even stronger effect on the actual image. Bring it back to here. Okay. And I'm going to make another copy and bring it up to this part of the layer up here. So the reason I'm using this image called Weird with the streaky lights is that I wanted to give more of a paper effect. So it's like we have our spectrogram, but we're also trying to, let's say denote at the same time that is a kind of manuscript or paper that we're actually seeing um, our musical spectrum on. Okay. I also want parts of my image to be a bit more vivid. It's a bit dark at the moment. So if I go to my original layer here, which is in the top left, I'm just going to duplicate this again. And what I'm going to do is use a transfer mode called Color Dodge, which you can see has increased the contrast inside there. Now if I want to decrease that just a tiny bit, I can go to my opacity slider up here, and let's say I could bring it to around 70%, which is good. And I can do that for the rest of my layers here as well. So if I duplicate this, go to Color Dodge, and take the opacity down a bit. Okay. So to save space as well inside my actual layers palette, what I can do is I'm just going to shift click layer 1 and layer 1 copy 2, which is just basically two layers duplicated, and they have a transfer mode applied to them to make the image a bit more vivid. Then what I can do is go to our layer options up here, and I can click merge layers, which will merge my two layers in there. So I could do this with these two as well. Layer, merge layers, and I'll just save some space. Also, what you could also do is when you're finished certain transfer modes, you could create a folder inside here and just click and drag our different layers into a folder. So let's say if they're just to do with this one particular part of the image, let's say the weird layers, you could just put those all in one folder just to save room, so you know where everything is to keep it nice and tidy. Okay. Okay, so to save some time, instead of you watching me playing around with my layers inside here, this is what my final outline is. So I've just used the basic techniques as you've seen there of just using soft lights and duplicating some layers and doing a nice simple layout for the background. And now all I have to do is add in my text. So the first text I'm going to add in is the name of the song, since this will be a single cover. And so I've placed these all just in a folder up here. So the name of the song is Notis Godar,